On this episode of Three Bro Sports Podcast, the podcast of three college students who could just talk about sports forever, Preston Ellis, SB Nation from the Bird Rights, is coming on to talk about the Pelicans' surprising season, but they're making their comeback right now. We're also going over the boomers of the NFL. They're making their return, a little bit of XFL talk, and the new NFL playoff format. But first,
shut up and sit down.
And welcome back to another Three Bro Sports Podcast. Like I said in the intro, the podcast, three college students who can just talk about sports forever. I'm Connor.
I'm Calvin.
I'm Willie.
So for Willie Cauley-Stein, or what's the occasion for Willie?
Willy Wonka.
All right, we'll go with that one. And today we got a really action-packed podcast for you, as a lot of breaking news has been going around, but we'll go into that later. I want to start it off with a little bit of NBA talk. And now, one thing we always do on our TV show, you can find it at tvdelmarva.com, is we always like to bring in NBA writers to go over their respective teams. But I want to switch it up. I want to start bringing some guests on to the podcast. Now, with us today, we got Preston Ellis for SB Nation for the Bird Rights for the New Orleans Pelicans. Mr. Ellis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so good. How are you guys doing? Enjoying the break?
We're just living the dream, I would say. I'll speak for all three of us when we're saying that. But I want to jump straight into the Pelicans because they're the most intriguing team to me personally in the NBA. Like, if you look at the numbers, 5th points per game, 3rd in pace, 4th three-point percentage, 5th in rebounding, 10th in blocks. Like, when you see those numbers, you would think that this team is already in the playoffs, fighting around a 6-7 spot. But they're 23-32. Like, even Brandon Ingram's been killing it, 25 a game. What has been going on with this Pelicans team for the ones who aren't as big of a diehard fans as us?
Well, it's a tale of two seasons right now for those who are casual fans of the New Orleans Pelicans, although I'm sure that they're very soon going to be diehard fans of this team. Number one, because they're going to be on national television about every other night. Yeah. Number two, because they're arguably the most watchable team in the NBA right now, them and the Memphis Grizzlies. It's easy to be excited about this team. Now, back to what I was saying about the tale of two different seasons. The first third of the season, the Pelicans are 6-22. They're one of the three worst teams in the NBA. The second half of the season, or the second third of the season, I should say, they're 17-10, and they post the 7th best net rating in the NBA. And they only have Zion for 9 of those games. And right now, Zion has one of the highest plus-minuses in the NBA. His on-court effect has been staggering. So only, 10 of those 17, or whatever the math is, are with Zion. And still, they're 7th best in the NBA during that time. Now, during that time, they didn't have Drew Holiday for a big portion of it. They didn't have Brandon Ingram for a portion of it. They didn't have Derek Favors for a portion of it. So when all these guys are on the floor together, all 5 starters, they're 17 points better than their competitors per 100 possessions. And they're not going against cupcakes. The Pelicans have faced the most difficult strength of schedule in the NBA to this point. Going forward, the last third of the season, they have the easiest schedule in the NBA. So things are about to flip. So you guys get excited for your New Orleans Pelicans because things are about to get turned up very soon.
Okay, I love the enthusiasm you have right now because, personally, I'm a Sacramento Kings fan, Brett is a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, and Calvin's a Chicago Bulls fan. So you kind of understand the trifecta of depression that we all go through together when we bring up about our teams. So we like to avoid it just a little bit. But I kind of, when I'm looking at the Pelicans, it just feels to me as if JJ Redick's little magical trick of always making it to the playoffs every single year, some of that magic is going to rub off to this Pelicans, and they may sneak into that 8th spot.
Yeah, so I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it's a 5-game lead that the Memphis Grizzlies have on the Pelicans. However, the Pelicans have played the Grizzlies twice and have stomped them each time, and they still have 2 remaining contests with them. On top of that, the Grizzlies have one of the 10 most difficult strengths of schedule going forward. They've had one of the easiest thus far. So things are about to get immensely more difficult for them, and they're about to get much easier for the Pelicans. So even though they've spotted them this generous 5.5-game lead, 14 of the Pelicans' last 15 games are against teams below 500. Those are teams like the Suns, the Hawks, the Knickerbockers, the Orlando Magic, teams like that. So everything is just kind of, with that being said, I heard we've got a Grizzlies fan. I love watching the Grizzlies. I watch the Grizzlies on my off nights when there's no Pelicans games rather than watch the Orlando Magic, who have credentials too, just because they're so much fun to watch. And you guys should be so excited. I'm so excited to watch us go head-to-head with them 4 times a year for the rest of my life with this great young group. But with that being said, right now, I think it's beyond conceivable. 538 has the Pelicans somewhere near 50% chance of making the playoffs. They have the Grizzlies well below that. I think Portland Trailblazers are somewhere around the same spectrum because I think they have the 26th most difficult strength of schedule going forward, so they also have a very easy schedule. So I think it's actually going to be a dogfight between the Blazers and the Pelicans for that 8th spot.
Man, this is my kind of guess. Knowing all the stats, because I'm a stat guy myself, but not to that extent. But I love the preparation you got, Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, I mean the Pelicans are one of those teams that are really exciting to watch just because of the lack of success they've had in years past. Same with the Grizzlies. I mean, like you said, you made a good note. These are really exciting teams to watch, even if you aren't a fan of them. The basketball they're playing right now, they're playing really well. A report that came out that I did want to ask you about. Connor mentioned earlier Brandon Ingram's been playing really well. I actually talked to another Lakers fan earlier today. He was wishing that they kept him and traded Kyle Crybaby Kuzma. Yeah, you probably know Hunter. But so a report came out saying that most NBA execs don't think that Brandon Ingram is worth the max contract money. Now, what would be your take on that?
I know exactly who you're referring to, Tim Bontemps of ESPN, and we've been dunking on him all day. I imagine these executives he's been speaking with are probably West Coast based, I would imagine. With that being said, there is some credence to Brandon Ingram struggling on the defensive end. There's no doubt about it. At the 4, he's been a disaster on the defensive end. On the offensive end, however, he's been making up for that because he's been so good. But when he plays the 3, there's a lot more the team around him can do to benefit his play there. He's actually been a net positive at the 3. And most importantly is the playmaking, the decision-making he makes on the offensive end. You think about his scoring, his footwork, the way that he's able to rise and get a shot over everybody. But he does so much else to get the rest of his teammates involved, to open up the offense, to get everybody comfortable. And most importantly, Drew Holiday is inarguably probably the Pelicans' spiritual leader, and he's one of the best isolation players in the NBA. But when you get to those final 2 minutes, Drew Holiday is just not himself on the offensive end. He fumbles the ball off his foot. He misses critical free throws. That's when Brandon Ingram shines the brightest. And this summer, they had a conversation with him, David Griffin. He was like, hey, I want to pay you, but you need to prove to me that you're healthy. And Brandon Ingram went on record and said that. And he has repeatedly said that he loves it here. He wants to be here long term. It is not a debate. It is not an argument. It is not a suggestion. Brandon Ingram is getting 4 years, $130 million this summer. If he stays healthy, if that thrombosis doesn't act up, at this point, there's no indication that it will. He has far exceeded expectations in New Orleans. He's playing much more like the last 7 games of his tenure in Los Angeles, and a lot unlike the rest of his tenure, his 3 years there. He has been a superstar. He's been one of the best scorers in the NBA. There is absolutely no realm on this universe where he doesn't get a max contract. And anybody who's saying that, who's prodding that, is probably has something on their end that they're hoping to get into the service, maybe into David Griffin's head, or maybe they just don't want the Lakers to look that bad on paper for trading away Lonzo Ball, who's been magnificent, Brandon Ingram, who's been an all-star at 22 years old, Josh Hart, who with Zion Williamson is averaging 11 and 10, and he's one of the best defensive 2 guards in the NBA. You can check all the statistics, ESPN defensive real plus minus, B-ball index, whatever you use to qualify his defensive impact, it's all there. This is what the Pelicans got from the Lakers. And the Lakers, they're not upset. They've had a great season, one of the best seasons in the NBA right now. They have to be considered one of probably the 3 favorites. So, there's a lot, but there's a lot more pressure on them right now because they need to win. They need to convince Anthony Davis to stay. LeBron James is going to be 36. The Pelicans have no pressure right now. So any pressure that's being put on the Pelicans to make some kind of decision or to get a couple of $1 million from Brandon Ingram in a negotiation, it's all nonsense. He's getting $130.
Yeah, I agree.
I would definitely have to agree. And now you also talk about the future of the Pelicans and everything. This team is really young, and of course Brandon Ingram most likely is going to be a part of that based on the way he's been playing. But I want to ask you, where exactly do you see the future headed, both this coming up season? I mean, obviously right now it's if the Pelicans do make the playoffs, it's going to be a lower seed. But where do you see the future going next year and years beyond for this? Maybe even a championship coming, if any.
Well, if you go to Cleaning the Glass and you look at Zion's impact as a 4 and as a 5 with the New Orleans Pelicans when he's in the lineup, I'm going to pull it up real quick. I know when he plays the 5, They are on an expected win total of 82 games. So if Zion starts at the center position next year, they're going to go 82-0 according to this metric. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. But when he plays the 4, I'm pulling it up right now, they have an expected win total of 65 games. This Clean Glass, highly recommend. You guys will learn so much, and it's so easy. It just makes everything much easier to find than NBA.com/stats or Synergy Sports. Any of the stuff you find on there is tremendous. This just kind of consolidates everything in a way that makes it faster. So highly recommend it. But anyway, the Pelicans are 10 points better per 100 possessions with him at the 4, which is the 91st percentile. They're 23 points better with him at the 5. All this to say, as long as Zion is in the lineup for the New Orleans Pelicans for, let's say, 65 games next season, they are going to win 50 games. This is a team on pace right now with him in the lineup to win 57 games if he had been playing over the course of the season. So this Pelicans team, even though they're only 23-31 right now, when they are healthy, they are going to be one of the best 4 teams in the Western Conference. And I think we're going to prove that to you over the latter course of this season, because if Zion can remain healthy, if Derek Favors can remain healthy, who's so critical to them on the defensive side of the ball, they are going to go 20-7 and snag this 8th seed. And then going forward, if these guys continue staying healthy, it's only going to go up from there, because you can see Lonzo Ball's improved play. Brandon Ingram is probably going to win most improved player. Zion is already putting up numbers that nobody in NBA history has in terms of points per game, rebounds per game per 36, and true shooting percentage or effective field goal percentage. He's shooting better than anyone because he's getting to the rim at an unprecedented rate. And this, like I said earlier, this isn't against cupcakes. This is against Rudy Gobert, who's probably going to win his 3rd straight Defensive Player of the Year trophy. Zion got whatever he wanted against Rudy Gobert. Same thing for Hassan Whiteside. He is bullying these guys. The one game where he struggled, understandably so, he's going against the best defense in the NBA, is Giannis and Brook Lopez and all those guys. He struggled against them, but he still got 22 points because he was able to find other ways to score. He got to the foul line. And so, long story short, the future is very, very, very bright for this team, because not only do they have this great young core, they have 3 first-round picks from the Lakers. They have 5 potential picks in this draft alone. They've got a draft and stash candidate, D.J. Luzada, who I saw at Summer League this year. He was outstanding, but obviously there's a language barrier there. He's got to get up to speed with the game. He's 18 years old. So they have so much to be positive about, just like the Grizzlies do. So, you know, going forward, this team is going to be a contender. They just have to stay healthy. And newsflash, they've got Aaron Nelson from the Phoenix Suns, who's supposed to be one of the best in the game. So you think that long term they're going to trend in that direction.
No, I fully agree with you. And this is the big difference of when the Pelicans had Anthony Davis. Of their best team, personally, I'm not going to say it was the year they had DeMarcus with Rondo. I'm going to go back a little farther to when Amar Ashik was the center, Drew Holiday, Tyreek Evans, Eric Gordon, a little bit of Ryan Anderson around that time. But it didn't feel as if that was going to be long-term sustainability. And now, when you're looking at this team with everybody's contract being so relatively low on rookie deals, I think Jackson Hayes is a great piece that not many people are thinking about now. I mean, Lonzo Ball, I'm going to ask you a question about him in just one sec, but I at least just want to say, like, the future of this team is so much more brighter than it would have been with Anthony Davis. Because with all this new draft capital that the Pelicans have acquired, it has done wonders for this team. Now, I at least want to kind of wrap things up around the Triple Bs, the king of the game. Triple Bs, I'm the man, level up, Super Saiyan. Lonzo Ball. Now, he's kind of been a little quiet ever since he left the Lakers, but the biggest stat that I've pulled from him, I know it's a basic one, 36% from 3, and he's shooting over 6 a game. Like, what has Alvin Gentry done to his shot? What magic pill has he given Lonzo Ball?
Well, it's actually Fred Benson, who I guess was most notably known for improving the shot of Tyreek Evans, who went from a below 30% shooter to 40% shooter. But he's done that for a lot of these guys. Brandon Ingram shooting over 40%. In the last 10 games, let me pull up 3-point percentage. The Pelicans have 6 players shooting above 37.5%. League average is around 36%. And these are all – the Pelicans – where all the questions this offseason were, where's the shooting going to come from? Who's going to be shooting? You've got J.J. Redick, and then you've got a bunch of guys who need the ball, who need to collapse the paint, who need to get to the bucket, who can't shoot from 3. Now, all of a sudden, for a large portion of the season, the Pelicans were the best three-point shooting team in the NBA, in large part to Fred Vincent, and like you said, in large part to the improvement of some of these guys, like Lonzo Ball, with Zion in the lineup, is shooting almost 40% from three-point range on, like you said, 6.6 shots per game. But that's not even the most important part of his game. The most important part of his game has been driving to the basket, and he's been doing that so much more with Zion on the floor than he was previously because guess what? There's more space. There's more space for him to go off the dribble, to kind of lean into guys, to get engaged in that pick and roll, and instead of just becoming the ball handler, the setup man, to transition to that roller with another point guard like a Drew Holiday. We've seen them in tandem doing some pick and roll together, and that's all due to the space that Zion is affording these players because, and I posted some of this if you follow me on Preston Ellis on Twitter, you can see 3 to 4 defenders collapse on Zion, and that's giving so much more space to Lonzo, and it's making him so much more comfortable. In his last 10 games, over 11 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. So he's basically a triple-double right now, and he has such a low usage rate, which is how much you affect a team scoring, both through passing or scoring. So, the ball has to go to Drew Holiday, to Brandon Ingram, to Zion, and he's still getting a triple-double every game. So you're absolutely right. He has completely emerged in the past 10 games, and he's been playing very good basketball.
Wow, I fully agree with you. And this Pelicans team is bright. Like you said, that this is the team to watch. Next year, don't be surprised if they're 57 wins and third in the West. But Mr. Ellis, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today, for taking time out of your day to come on. Now, you can find Mr. Ellis on The Bird Right. You're a writer on there. Is there any articles you're coming out with you want to let them know about?
Well, I'm very excited for Bleacher Report. I just had my 46th article, and it was basically predicting the NBA All-Star class of 2025. But for the Bird Rights, I had a very controversial piece this week about how season ticket prices have been changing and how they've been negatively affecting some of our locals who have had season tickets for a long time. And this is stuff that's typical of any team that gets, a player of Zion's ilk, is that there's going to be fast and sweeping changes. So got a lot of controversy, a lot of support for that if you have any interest in that. But I'd encourage anybody, if you follow New Orleans Pelicans, go to thebirdrights.com. You'll find the best information there. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a writer. It's because I deeply respect all the other guys that are part of the team. So highly recommend, if you want to know more about them, go there.
All right. We definitely will be right after this, but that's how I found you on there, Mr. Ellis. So thank you so much for coming on. We do hope to have you on again very soon.
Sounds good, guys.
All right. You have a good one. And that was Preston Ellis for you guys. Now, I know I may sometimes come out with some statistics, but I can't get to that extreme. I'm going to have to ask for that link again of that website he was pulling everything up for.
And clear glass or something.
Now,
like
guys,
that.
I need you guys to be just as prepared as Mr. Ellis was from now on. So do your homework. We got a show Saturday.
Oh, man, math was not my strong subject.
No, it wasn't mine either. I promise you that. But I know we can go into NBA all we want, but that's what we do on the TV show. I just think it's always best for us to expand our horizons a little bit more, especially on the podcast. We're in talks with a couple more NBA writers to come onto the podcast very soon, even MLB writers as well. But we can get into that all we want. But there was some breaking news that happened last night that I do want to go over with the NFL. The NFL came out and had a new playoff format. And this is almost more like how the NBA does theirs of 8 teams from each conference make it in. This time it's 7 for the NFL. Now, I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on it because I sent it to you guys, but what the hell are you thinking right now, Goodell? Why are you trying to run it like the NBA? Like, what are we going to now reward teams that go 6-10 into the playoffs? Is that seriously how we're going to start doing things? 7-9 gets you in? Like, that shouldn't be allowed. Keep it the way it is. The playoffs aren't bad. They aren't. Why are you needing to change something? If this was something everybody's been saying, oh, this stinks, let's change it. Yeah, fine. That's cool. But nobody's complaining about it. Because, look, in the NFC, the second best team was, if I'm not mistaken, they were 7. They were 7-9. It's like, that team didn't deserve to make it in.
Do you think this has something to do with Philly getting a home game against Seattle last year?
I don't know.
Just because that division was such garbage.
I don't know, personally. It's still the winner of a division takes it all. Like, let them do so.
Yeah,
That's the same with the MLB. I mean, they always will take one from the division, and it's the wild card after that. Like, you leave it at that.
I don't personally think that the current playoff format is, has anything wrong with it. But I also potentially can see it being exciting, and at least in my opinion, to have a couple more teams added in there just to kind of, make it even more of a toss-up to who's going to make it to that Super Bowl. You add another game, add some more teams. Just, like a team who didn't make it into the playoffs this past year that should have been. Like I can't think of.
There is none.
I think I saw.
What, are we going to reward the Jets
like,
for going 7-9 at the end of the year for that?
I think you're being generous saying the Jets would go 7-9.
No, that's what they went last year. But I'm saying if we use that,
they really had that good of a record.
Yeah, they turned it around at the very end. They were 7-9 if I'm not mistaken. It was either them or Atlanta. I know Atlanta did.
I saw some article that talked about like had this been in place last year, I think it would have been the Steelers and the Rams that would have done it. Which I mean, the Rams, that's not bad.
No, they didn't deserve it. They fell flat on their backs. They don't deserve a playoff rate.
I feel like it could have been a lot worse than that. Now, but
so it's 7 teams from each division, and there's 32 teams. So that's 14 teams making it in, and 18 that aren't.
Yeah, the Jets went 7-9 at the end of the year.
So that's almost half the league.
Yeah, so basically the Jets would have made it in.
Too.
Yeah.
The Jets would have made it in as the 7th.
The Jets would have not.
What, they wouldn't?
No, it would have. The 7th seed would have been Pittsburgh because they were 8-8.
Wait, is it 6 teams right now, or is it 7?
It's 6 teams right now, 7 with this like new rule.
I don't like an odd number. That kind of bugs me. I know the MLB is 5, but still that's because it's 1 per division, then 2 wild card. It doesn't make too much sense to me as why the NFL thinks that this is something that's necessary.
I mean, like I understand why they would do it, just because I mean, like, oh, that's another team in the playoffs. Guess what? That's 2 more playoff games at least for each thing. Yeah, that's more money.
It just seems too greedy of the NFL money-wise to say that they'll come out and try to do that. Personally,
even then, it's one of those things to me where it's like I've been kind of for expanding playoffs a little bit, but I do think I've never been a fan of the whole division thing because I think it's wrong when you get a team that goes 7-9 as a 4th seed, and then you get a team that's like 10-6 as a 6th seed. But
I think this would make more sense. Like, what if they did this? Like, they added a few more expansion teams, and then they talked about
if they added 2 more expansion teams, then we can talk about it.
They're talking about adding a game to the season, taking a bye week away from the playoffs, and taking a game away from the preseason, all to kind of make up for this extra team going into the playoffs. So, I mean, if you add some more teams in there, that might make it more interesting, kind of balance things a little more. But I just think that's too many teams getting in, and kind of, like you said, doesn't really give, teams the will or wherewithal to try and get to 10-6.
Yeah, exactly.
11-5.
They can say,
like 7-9, we're good.
Yeah,
we can bench our quarterback. We can bench our quarterback week 17.
Yeah, but here's my thing about it. If you want to make it, if you want to make any changes, then let's get rid of your division winners and the wild card, make it record based. If you really want to do it, make 6 teams record based, because I do agree with Seattle at 12-4 being the away team in a wild card game just doesn't seem completely right. If that's how they want to do it, that's something I could be okay with, but I don't like having 7 teams being put in there, especially when normally that 7th team, they normally aren't a winning record. Normally it's the 8-8. It's normally 7-9. That's how it normally would be. I mentally can't see that happening.
I feel like the other thing that it kind of works with too, and Brett and I were talking about it earlier, that it honestly just kind of gives some bad teams hope. I mean, like, let's be honest here. Minnesota and Arizona are 2 teams generally are not playoff teams, or at least if they are, they're low.
I was going to say, wait, didn't you check how the Vikings did this year? They Vikings made it
did do well this year, but that's, honestly, it's kind of a rarity.
Hey, come on. Mike Zimmer's made the playoffs. I think it's 4 out of his 5 seasons.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I mean, that's good for the Vikings, but it's also one of those things where I'm like...
He's also dating a supermodel now.
Are you serious? He's
Coach of the year, Mike Zimmer.
No, Mike Zimmer's a model?
No, I saw a picture of Mike Zimmer on Twitter with the supermodel girlfriend. So.
All right, I'm pulling it up right now.
It could be false. Wow. I do know that, when he played for Cincinnati... I'm not going to get into all that personal stuff. I do know he's a single man, and
I'm just saying, not to sound mean or anything, but what's his contract?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's due to expire.
A lot of money.
It's due to expire the following year, but the Spielman said they want to renew it, so he'll probably be there for the foreseeable future.
What? He's got a supermodel girlfriend. I'll give it to him. Coach of the year.
She's blonde, very pretty lady. Oh my God. Good for you.
25.
Good for you, Mike.
25 years younger than Coach Zimmer.
Good for you, man.
Well,
good for you.
I mean,
wow.
If you can, then you should, in my opinion.
I mean,
whatever makes him happy, by all means, I'm not here to.
But
He's got
speaking
my
of
respect.
Minnesota, speaking of Minnesota, did you hear about Everson Griffin?
No, what happened?
Please tell me what happened.
He opted out of his contract. He's going to be a free agent.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah,
I liked him
I
a lot
know.
there.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a sad fit.
And he always said he wanted to, retire a Viking. So it's kind of weird, but maybe he kind of felt like he wasn't going to get the contract. I don't know. You never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, who knows what's going on? But a few things that we do know: the NFL boomers, they're sticking around here. I'm not just talking about the kickers. I'm talking about Adrian Peterson and Drew Brees saying they're coming back for another season. Now, Drew Brees, I somewhat expected that, as the talent hasn't really fallen off so far. I understand against the Vikings it did. That was one awful game. But, overall, he had a pretty good year. Adrian Peterson surprised me a little bit. It kind of seems like he's kind of just going for the record.
No, he's got to get that check still. He doesn't have all the money that he made over the years. That's all I'll say that.
Yeah. But after Peterson's little money issue, it just seems a little weird.
I won't
Peterson
make
comes
the
back.
joke I made to Calvin yesterday in class.
All right, fine. Well, secrets don't make friends, but
Remember
it's okay.
what I said?
Yeah, all the listeners
yeah,
remember.
yeah.
All the listeners can remember
We
the
all
joke
remember.
you said. Yeah.
There's a Family Guy joke. Did you see?
It's a very
There's
inside joke.
there's a cutaway in Family Guy, and it's Adrian Peterson and his son walking through the woods. And I don't know what his son says, but Adrian Peterson's just looking around at all the trees. He's like, "There's so many things around here I could beat you with."
Okay.
It's so offensive, but it is honestly so funny.
This is America, freedom of speech.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You do have
It's
a point.
there. It happened. It's history.
You do have a point. But Drew Brees, this is a little significant because of Taysom Hill. He wants to become a franchise quarterback. And he wasn't upset that Drew Brees is coming back for a year. But what team is going to be shelling out a lot of money to Taysom Hill? Seems a little...
I mean, you saw in that playoff game against the Vikings, Drew Brees just really struggled. I mean,
Yeah, I could tell you who's going to shell out some money to Taysom Hill, and that is going to be the New York Guardians of the XFL. Because the
I was going to say, I'm like, wait, the Guardians.
the XFL needs some quarterbacks right now, and honestly, Taysom Hill at this point, it's kind of being a dead horse with this, but what is his role here? I mean, they say he's a quarterback. He does literally everything else. And honestly, Teddy Bridgewater did well. When
yeah,
Yeah.
Taysom Hill is better in that Swiss Army knife role. Why are you going to limit him to being under center all the time?
It doesn't seem right, personally.
He is one of the most, most teams have that one guy that's you really don't know exactly what he is, but
And every
kinda
time
does
he's
a little
throwing the
everything.
ball, it's like the defense is like, oh crap, Taysom Hill's throwing the ball. It's like off of reverse or something, or he lines up under center, and everyone's kind of like scrambling to figure out what's going on. You put Taysom Hill behind the center every play, just dropping back to throw. Who knows how accurate of a quarterback he'll be in those situations?
It's either we're not giving him enough slack for what he actually can do based on what we've seen, or he's really overrating himself. With all due respect, a guy as talented as he is, he has all rights to do so, to demand a lot of money. He's been successful for a winning team. I'm just curious what other teams are seeing in him, because I think the Saints have kind of figured it out. It's like, look, you're a Swiss blade of, you kind of can do everything. You can start up the car for Drew Brees while they're done with practice. That's your biggest role. See, Calvin got a good laugh out of that, so I feel pretty happy.
But I think the league's a better place with Adrian Peterson playing in it.
No, it is, because for all the fans who just got into football.
Me over there. I heard
No,
that.
I know you're a Vikings fan.
It's just he's a great player. Absolutely, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where I'm like, at this point, it almost just feels like
respect the
he's
hustle.
there.
Respect
in
the hustle.
Washington.
Frank Gore's still playing.
What is he doing?
He's in
got
Buffalo.
like 4 years on Adrian Peterson.
Is he coming back this year?
Yes, he is.
I haven't heard anything about him retiring. I feel like I would have.
Gore's coming back one more year. I know that.
Oh my god, man!
Gore's gonna outplay Vinatieri. He's gonna surpass him. He's gonna play till he's 52.
I wasn't even thinking about a competition of that.
running back, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
He's gonna break a hip out there. But
We'll come back in a decade. We'll see where things are.
Dwayne Haskins. Just imagine being able to hand the ball off to Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he'll have a spectacular 2-yard gain probably for you. Now with the Redskins, he pretty much just runs full speed into the line.
Hey, let's not count the Redskins short. I think Ron Rivera was a really good hire. There's a lot of
I'm
good
not selling him short.
With how bad the NFC East is,
Oh yeah, that's doable.
I wasn't selling them short. I was just saying Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, because in all honesty, I know this may just sound totally outlandish. You guys could laugh at me if you want. I think there's actually a chance Washington could take the NFC East.
Yeah,
if Dwayne Haskins has that amazing bounce back like sophomore year, like Jared Goff, for instance, remember how putrid he was his rookie year? Sophomore year, everything was so much better under a new coach that's had a good track history with offensive players. Like, I don't think it's something that you can completely laugh at. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, look at their competition.
Well, I mean, let's remember how they were not at the end of this year, but last year when they were 5-3 with Alex Smith, and they still had the same exact team, but now you can at least get Chase Young out of Ohio State. And you can tell the difference of what happens when you have a generational defensive end on a defense that's been completely lost. Like for the 49ers, for example, they were 29th in 2018, then they go 2019, they're first best in almost like every single category. And it's not just because of Nick Bosa, but you can get pieces around them is kind of what I'm saying.
But if you had to pick a team to win the NFC East next year, would you feel confident going with the Redskins?
If I'm like doing it Vegas odds-wise, I'd like to see what the numbers are because I'd like to make a big profit. If I put
this
20
is me
bucks down,
asking
500.
you on the Three Bros Sports Show podcast, whatever. Who's going to win the NFC East next year?
Get back to me after the draft.
Who's going to win the
I was
NFC
going to say,
East
get
next
back
year?
to me after the
Because
draft.
I don't know because I don't know the direction of where the Eagles are going, because they could be so upset about how the year ended for them of, well, yeah, they ended up winning a game, but still, like, there's a lot to be concerned about with this team as a whole. I mean, your receiving core, you could go put some Pee-wee football players out there, and I don't see a difference of Nelson Aguilar. But even the Giants I don't know if they can make that big step first year with Joe Judge. I mean, we all know what happens when you get a Patriots assistant as head coach. Best thing ever.
Yeah.
So somebody in the 80s.
I do know that there was some other topics you wanted to talk about on the podcast, but before we move on,
No, we're not
from
done
NFL.
just yet.
Okay.
No, because
But
you're the one asking.
I got some news here.
Well, hold on, buddy. You
I
can
just
give
wanted
me
to
your
fire
news
off.
flash later.
And
Now, I'm asking you. Who's winning the NFC East if you want to start asking us? I'm saying wait till after the draft, but if you want to say yours now.
Unlike you gentlemen who like to tippy-toe around all your answers just to make sure your record's all good. I'm just going to say it like it is, go with my gut, and I'm sure the audience can respect that. I'm going to go Cowboys.
Yeah, that's probably the safe bet about it. Yeah,
I don't know. Dallas might be one of the ones I'm most iffy about.
I'm iffy about
More
them as
iffy
well.
than the Giants or the Redskins.
Well, the Redskins don't have anything to
Here's the
play
thing.
for.
The Giants, I think, at least have talent. They do, and I think they can at least get some talent in the draft. And they're always just one of those teams that somehow gets hot. I think they can do it. And Washington, like you said, I could see improvement there, especially with Ron Rivera. NFC East doesn't exactly have the best talent in the world.
Exactly.
I think you could make an argument for any one of those teams
Well,
in there.
that's how it was for the NFC West, because
Yeah.
you could have made an argument saying Arizona could have came out and won the West.
Yeah.
Because of Kyler Murray, generational talent with the air raid offense. So I'm not trying to say I'm going up against my record, because you know me in toilet bowl matchups, I feel quite offended I'll take the New York Jets multiple times, and I get laughed at for that. Or I'll take any of the bad teams, and I'll get laughed at.
No one's holding a gun to your head making you do that.
All I'm saying is I
You
said
just
Ryan
like to be
Tannehill's
controversial.
Hey, who was the one who said Ryan Tannehill will be better than Brady before he even became the starter for Tennessee? Yeah, that's me.
Who said the Titans are going to the playoffs?
We all said they were.
To be fair, you did say that.
I
We
said
all-
it first.
Hey, you said that they'd win a division. We all said that they would just make it to wild card.
Nah, whatever. You can go back and watch the episode for
All right,
yourself.
yeah,
great.
please do so.
None of us said that they would win a playoff game, let alone go to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
anyone expected that.
Wait, did I have the Titans win? No, yeah, I had them beating
I think
the
you did
Patriots.
when we made
I had
the
them beating the
playoff
Patriots.
picks. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only time I really had them for that. But we can go on about our track records forever. You can just listen to them yourself. Just know I'm pretty good with the toilet bowl.
I want to go
matchups here and there.
with a speed round here.
All right, sounds good.
I'm
Let's
gonna
do it.
like PTI last 30 seconds. All right,
Boom,
they just
go.
fire them off, and then you give your quick answers to them. So
All right.
first off here, what do you guys have to make of Myles Garrett's comments about Mason Rudolph months after the incident?
Stupid.
Stupid.
It's idiotic at this point.
And what's your reasoning for that, gentlemen?
Well, it's stupid on the basis of why wouldn't you have said that the first day? Like that's what we talked about when we brought that up, Brett.
Yeah.
Of why like I first want to say maybe there was something behind it, but still, it's like 2-3 months after. That seems totally outlandish.
Well, and plus, thing too, no one else really backed him up on that.
No one.
Even
Not
in
a
the
single
beginning,
person.
and no one still is. So it's
Not a
like,
single person on the
Exactly. If
Browns.
more people came out saying like, yeah, that was said, then okay, yeah,
Not
you
a
start to
single
believe it.
person backed him up, and you got Mike Tomlin coming on TV, who never talks to anybody, sticking up for his quarterback.
Yeah.
So, if anything, I just think this kind of makes Garrett look even worse.
Yeah, it does.
It's just like if something like that had happened, you would think that right as he and Mason Rudolph were getting pulled apart, like he'd be trying to make a case for himself, like he said this, he said that, but
But hold on, does it make it worse for Goodell for letting him back in so early, or for Garrett? Who looks worse now? Because Goodell, it seems as if Goodell just believed Myles Garrett. Like, oh yeah, Rudolph said a few things. Yeah, welcome back to the NFL.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
I don't know, maybe Goodell, but it's
Yeah, I'm throwing the hard-hitting
It's a bit
ones.
early to tell at this point. I think honestly we'll probably have to wait till a few weeks into the season.
All right, PTI guy, what you got next?
All right, so next, you got the Cleveland Browns. Cleared up $13 million in their cap space, cut 3 players. Most notable was TJ Carey, their cornerback, played there for 2 years, 125 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks. Do you think that this clearing up $13 million in their space is them trying to make room to bring in someone else?
Who wants to go to Cleveland after last year? Like,
I don't know.
When they went all in,
Someone who wants $13 million.
People go there. I mean, we
No,
keep
they
saying,
do.
why
They
would
do.
you? But people keep doing it.
they do. But the thing is, it's like after such an awful catastrophe of last year, it doesn't make any sense for like an A-list type free agent to say, I want to go to Cleveland. It doesn't feel as if Cleveland was like one piece away from making it to the playoffs. Mm-mm. It felt like they were like 50 pieces and maybe get a couple exterminators into that facility to extract a few people up in the front office.
Baker Mayfield got lucky that Jameis Winston had such a spectacular season with those 30 interceptions. To overshadow what a terrible year Baker Mayfield had. Because
I don't know how much faith I have in Baker Mayfield is kind of like my new question about it. And who could they really, like, we're looking at, like, you have Njoku, you have, I'm looking at the regular, like, your star players.
Well, Calvin, let me ask you this. What piece do you think the Browns are missing?
Oh God! I mean, there's a lot.
An
of pieces
entire
of the
offensive
puzzle.
line? Can you say
Yes,
that?
yes.
I mean, if you want to bring Joe Thomas out of retirement, I think that would help.
He looks in great shape. I don't know if you guys have seen any
does.
photos. He looks
I think
shredded.
he could still play, honestly, and
He
probably
probably
be
has
great.
nightmares about playing in Cleveland, though. Like he
wouldn't
goes to
blame
sleep and then he wakes up in the Cleveland locker room and he's like, no,
Not again. You know what I think he wakes up to watching? I really think he wakes up watching the Corey Coleman complete miss of Week 17. Basically, this is the catch that made Cleveland go 0-16. Of him looking at it and just seeing it over and over.
just to remind himself never to come back.
Yeah, that has to be what he wakes himself up to. That has to be. All right.
Well-
If that man does not get his jersey retired in Cleveland,
God.
there is something wrong with that
Yeah,
organization.
Well, yeah, there's a lot.
There's a
All
lot of things
One
wrong.
more on the PTI, then I got to switch it over
well,
one
can
more
we
thing.
make it 2? Because
Fine,
there's
'cause
one
you're
that I have
special.
to include,
We
but
got
this one, okay, maybe 3. I'll make them quick.
You're going 2. It's a dictatorship out here, boys.
All right,
You're
well,
doing 2.
sure, I'm going to. We'll just say that. There were 2 big signings. I'm turning 2 into 1 here. One for you. Cardinals re-signed their offensive tackle, DJ Humphries, 3 years, $45 million, $29 million guaranteed. And also Greg Olsen. He signed with the Seahawks, so that's a couple NFC West moves, which I think Greg Olsen and Russell Wilson could be a pretty good combination. I mean, yeah, Greg Olsen's a little older, but he's always been a solid tight end. What do you have to make of this offensive tackle that me and Connor know nothing about?
I mean, honestly,
Wow, you're
Do
really
you know?
sounding-
Do you
Yes, I
know DJ Humphries? All right. Well,
He's actually a really solid offensive lineman. I thought
He's
15,
all right. I
15
mean,
million a year is a little.
that's what I thought. I'm like, he's okay. He's had some injury problems. I think he's been in the league for 4 years now, and he's only played 29 games.
Yeah, like if
which
you-
I mean, like, he's not bad, but $15 million a year is just too much for me.
that's what you pay for offensive linemen. If there's a, I mean, the
Yeah,
Vikings
like,
paid
if you
Mike
wanna-
Remmers like
If Zach
3 years,
Martin is
29
available
mil.
for that price, by all means. But DJ Humphries, I'm like, I thought about it after I saw that, got the notification on my phone. I'm like, I would have given like at most like $5 or $6 million a year,
and he would have
for
walked
that.
because he
Well,
knows someone else would have paid him.
Yeah, with his injury history, I thought 15 million was a little out there because, like, if you gave him a grade, I would give the C+, B- of like you're solid, but your injuries are kind of holding you back right now. Take 8 or 9, and we'll go from there.
But
just
speaking of
risky.
offensive linemen, I would be remiss. This is the last one, by the way. I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up at least. Y'all hear about Greg Robinson?
Yeah,
he
we
was
heard about
arrested
that.
at the border. Let me tell you, 157 pounds of marijuana amongst him and the two other people in his single vehicle.
You know, that's half of his
157
body
pounds.
weight. That's half of his body weight.
Like, how do you fit all that in the car?
I don't know.
I don't know.
How much you have to have
We
to
don't need to
accumulate
start-
157
Have you seen
pounds?
We're the Millers? He probably had it like stuffed up in the fridge and every cabinet. you
Stop
opened
giving our
was
viewers
just-
ideas, Brett. Stop
Yeah.
giving them
No,
ideas.
we are not promoting
just
that
surprised.
here.
This is a rated R podcast.
I'm just surprised
today. I'm sorry about
the
this.
NFL check wasn't enough for him. He decided to go to Mexico and try to bring some back. And
Yeah,
sell it.
that does seem off. But before we get off on the PTI, there was one thing that we didn't talk about, and that was the Greg Olson signing. You did bring up, but we didn't say anything about it. This is a Jimmy Graham signing 2.0 all over again. Olson, he can slowly produce, but it's the same with Jimmy Graham. All playoff experience. Him and Russell Wilson could be great together. It doesn't do anything. It just doesn't.
I think it
too much
depends
sense
on
to
if
me.
Greg Olson is how far past his prime he is, because you saw with Cam
But he's
Newton.
injured all the time.
That's true.
That's the
I
problem.
mean, I feel like with this is pretty much a pure locker room kind of move. I mean, teams do that all the time where they bring in guys strictly for the locker room. And I mean, he does bring about a veteran presence. He can help teach some guys.
I mean, Benjamin Watson
it's-
keeps getting jobs every year. That dude's
Yeah,
like
it's-
older than my dad. That dude could be my grandfather.
I mean, it's just one of those things. I don't really see it being like, oh, we want this guy because he's still going to be a Pro Bowler and all this other stuff. It's just kind of like the veteran presence, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that.
And everybody, hold up. The Falcons resigned a punter and a kicker. So
Matt Bryant.
the
he
world
can
might
go
have
forever.
stopped when that happened.
And they're both Patriots, too.
Yeah.
Ryan Allen and Young Ho Koo.
Yeah, remember that guy? Played for San Diego, and he was like one of their worst kickers.
Yeah, we all can remember about every bad kicker in San Diego. But Brett, thanks for the
You're
PTI
welcome.
segment. Now, I want to end things off as the MLB is a crapshoot. Let's just get this out the way. Now, this is kind of our final segment for today's podcast. Now, Mike Trout is the face of baseball. As Calvin may want to just disagree, he still is. When you're looking at his historical numbers, the only person close to him is Lou Gehrig, really, Mickey Mantle, like the best of the best of anybody. And Rob Manfred has always called out Mike Trout for not being public enough to the media, for not saying anything if something happens. Well, with this Houston Astros scandal, guess who decides to speak up finally? Mike Trout. And he says the same exact thing of these players should have been punished harder. They shouldn't be playing right now. The commissioner has done nothing. If I knew what it was like, oh my God, I don't. This game would be so much more fun if I knew every single pitch coming to me. You know what? If Mike Trout knew every single pitch, I think he would have had about 95 home runs and batted about 450.
I think if I knew every pitch, I might have been able to get a base hit.
Yeah, you would have gotten a few base hits out there, Calvin. I would have been in the low 240s if I knew the pitch. Like, don't underestimate my
I still
baseball
would have struck
capabilities.
out.
Brett, I'll give you a couple lessons.
Give you a
buddy.
wiffle ball bat.
I'll teach you enough.
Can you
But
give me a tennis racket? And I might be able to hit it.
only if we give you a dodgeball, basically, a dodgeball-sized thing to throw at you. Then it's easier for your hand-eye coordination. But back to what I was saying about Mike Trout. For the face of baseball to come out and say that and basically kind of go against what the commissioner's been bashing him for the whole time, and to finally speak out into one thing he does is to bash the commissioner for not doing enough. Doesn't that say enough right there? And even Giancarlo Stanton was saying that this is just still messed up of what the light punishments you're giving to these guys. Like, the players aren't even being affected by this, and they were the ones that instrumented this and said, yeah, I want to keep doing this. Please let me know what these pitches are. It still doesn't make sense to me. I will never wrap my mind around this. And also, pitchers are going to be punished more if they bean Jose Altuve or Correa than Altuve and Correa were for cheating for 3 years. That got them a World Series ring. They won't be suspended, but the pitcher will be. And the Angels, my Angels are playing them the first game. And I can guarantee you, Jared Weaver will come out of retirement and pluck all 9 of them in a row. He doesn't care if he gets told he's tossed. He's just going to grab a bucket of baseballs and pluck every single one of them, as hard as 85 mile an hour could be. Now, I'll at least throw it off to you now. If I give you an over-under of per series, so a 4-game series, of a player getting a hit on the Astros 4 times, per series. Would you give it an over or under? Calvin, I'll start off with you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that real quick?
So-
I was looking up something. I wanted to try and get the conspiracy down that I thought of, but...
It's fine, Calvin. No need to apologize. So if we went a full 4-game series against any team against the Astros, and Vegas odds were if an Astro player will get beaned 4 times in that series, would you take over? I would too.
Well over.
Because I don't think the pitchers are afraid. They're not. Because there's something called a minor league system. You call a guy up from AAA, and your manager says, you know what, see Altuve 27, beat him straight at the 2 and 7, right in the center, and then you'll get sent back down to the minors, take your 2-game suspension. Who cares?
A pitcher does that, no one's going to bat an eye at it. Like, most baseball players will stick up, be like, you shouldn't hit players intentionally. No one is going to be sticking up for the Astros this year.
The only person who said don't is Stephen A. Smith, but also he hasn't had any baseball background. I've at least played. I played for over 12 years, and I can at least say this: like, I didn't make it far or anything. I stopped throughout high school. I wasn't good enough, but I can at least say that there should be a love for the game, and it's a natural feeling. And if you're cheating, and if you're just being cocky the whole time and knowing this stuff, you deserve to get hit. That's coming from a pitcher myself. If I knew you knew my signs, you'd get plucked straight in the back. No questions about it.
Would he know it's coming, though?
No, he won't know it's coming. He'll know
He might see it coming.
No, because my catcher calls my favorite catcher of all time, Sam Giannotti's also a viewer of the show. I guarantee if he was my catcher, he'd call fastball outside, and that just means I'm going to start plucking him. So he can get ready to extend out. He's going to have to start extending out that back when he's on the table of him having to get some medical treatment. I'm kidding. I don't throw that hard. But I think every single week, this could be just a daily update of what the MLB is doing wrong.
About this situation?
It really could.
Yeah, it really could.
You're going to be like an old man on your rocking chair, like talking to your grandkids, like, sit down, Sonny, I'll tell you the story of the despicable Houston Astros of 2020.
Yeah, well...
And how 7 players died the following year from broken clavicles.
I mean, I sound like an old grandpa yelling at clouds. When I say in baseball that the shift should be banned, I like the natural feeling to the game. I feel the analytics have gotten just so awful to where cheating has now been actually something teams will look at. Like, the teams have those Apple Watches. They can relay signs over. That's how it happened with the Red Sox. Why Alex Cora, he was fired from the manager spot. I mean... And it's now allowing these trash cans, the new surveillance cameras watching everything. I mean, analytics has hurt baseball. It's supposed to be something to help, like, for the NBA, but it's a lot different from baseball and basketball. Basketball is a more up-tempo type of play. It just seems the Amazon statistics stuff that they came out with has just killed the game of baseball. It really has. You guys have any final thoughts?
I'd just like to say that, I mean, we can talk about all we want about how baseball players getting hit, whatnot. Imagine if this happened in NBA, NHL, or NFL. Whoever the team that was caught doing it, really, their players would be getting laid out on the floor or the grass or the ice.
Yes.
I mean, there would be, it would almost look like a murder out there. I can only imagine what is going to happen when you give guys bats and balls to throw at them. I mean, honestly, I kind of want to watch some Astros games just because I want to see the bench clearing brawls, but...
It'll be interesting to see if people, let the reputation of the sport get away from them, or if they just decide to go with what they feel in their hearts and just decide to beam them in the side of the head.
I think the sad thing, though, is...
Either way, I'll enjoy watching the highlights.
Yeah. But you know what's sad, though? Anyone associated with that Astros team at this point, it doesn't matter what they do the rest of their career. That is the one thing people are going to remember them for. And anytime it's like, oh, yeah, I won a World Series. Well, you cheated for it. Good for you. That might as well be a replica ring you bought.
Yeah, homeless man sitting on the street just like, look what I have.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just a piece of garbage, sir.
No, I agree with you.
You're living in garbage.
Now, that's going to wrap things up for today's Cerebro Sports Podcast. I know we're getting close to that 50-minute mark, and that's pretty big. I mean, we could go on for like 3 hours if we really wanted to.
15 minutes? No, I'm just making a bad joke.
I was going to say, I'm like, wait, I said 15? But thank you so much for tuning in. Check us out, Cerebro Sports on TV Delmarva every single Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's always a fun one as we have new segments that aren't talked about on this podcast. You can always check it out. And if you're enjoying this podcast, share it out to a couple of your friends. Let's see what, because we want to get all the viewers involved as well. We normally will have a Q&A session every once a month, and I think next week probably will be it, as it's the last week of February.
Yes, and actually outside of the classroom, I have a box full of 36 carrier pigeons with all. They have our QR code tied to their ankles, and we're going to set them free.
Dude, it's about time. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you just got to get your name out on all different kinds of platforms.
Yeah, of course. Three Bros Sports. It's a little bit of a catchy
It's the one
name.
service the Anchor doesn't provide. They don't provide the carrier pigeons.
Yeah, I don't understand why, but we do appreciate Anchor for always sponsoring today's podcast. Or if you want to become your own sponsor, if you want to sponsor our podcast for literally $10 a podcast, we'll shout you out, give you a little ad read, whatever you want for $10. Yeah, I'm making the rules up here, boys. But this is for just
$10.
this show.
Connor will do whatever you want.
Anything y'all want, $10, because we have on Anchor, we have a donation button for support. If you want to give the $10 through there and you have a message to say or something like that, send it. Please do. I will literally go on here and say anything you all want. Anything.
Well, anything G-rated.
Yeah, anything.
PG.
Well, we do have the bleep button, so I can always use that
true.
if needed. Because our website isn't cheap to operate, folks. 3brosports.com, by the way. You can find everything on there for us. TV Don't Marvel on YouTube. Find our latest TV episode. But we just now hit the 50-minute mark. I just want to ramble on to get that. Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, especially with Preston Ellis from the Bird Rights. It was really fun. We'll be as analytic as he is coming up next. But I'm Connor.
I'm Calvin.
I'm Brett.
Have a good one. Three Bro Sports would like to thank Anchor FM for sponsoring this podcast and Benjamin Tissot on bensound.com for the amazing intro, outro music.
Shut up and sit down.